there's a lot of tension right now in Windsor-Essex, and I just need to cool the temperature there.
Stuck in stage 1, with businesses promising to protest. Windsor-Essex tries to sort out what has to happen next to reopen the region.
They didn't bring COVID to Canada. Canada gave them COVID.
This greenhouse grower is going to start testing his workers tomorrow for COVID-19, and he's defending the agri-farm sector, saying it's time for unity, not pointing fingers. A live look outside now. Some concerning clouds above us. A low risk of showers with thunderstorms a possibility. It's 21 degrees outside right now, feeling like 26. Colette Kennedy has the full forecast tonight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for joining us. Tensions are high as the debate continues on how Windsor-Essex can move to stage 2 of reopening. After getting slammed by the mayor, the health unit is firing back. Dale Molnar has more.
Instead of pointing fingers, we should be thanking them for the work and asking them what they need.
Strong words after Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens lashed out at the health unit yesterday, saying it should have acted sooner to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in the agri-farm sector.
We can't have this dithering. The health unit should have stepped in long ago, mandated things to happen.
We will ignore the noise of those looking for someone to blame and will continue to work towards reopening our community in a safe way. We need our community leaders to remember that the 240 individuals employed at the health unit have been working tirelessly.
Dr. Wajid Ahmed says one of the things they need is more collaboration and support, and for bylaw officers to enforce health unit orders. The Premier is also backing Dr. Ahmed and the health unit.
He's doing a great job. He's taking a lot of heat right now, but he's working his back off. And to the folks of Windsor-Essex, we're going to get back on track.
But the Premier is also calling on the farm operators to test their workers. There's further debate around potentially separating Windsor from Leamington and Kingsville so Windsor can go ahead with Phase 2. The Mayor doesn't think that's a good idea, but the Chamber of Commerce says that needs to happen.
We want to be able to provide the support urgently to the ones that can reopen safely, comply with all the guidelines that the province is going to put in place. So with all of that, we should be able to allow the majority of the companies to reopen it.
Some people we talked to say we're ready for Phase 2 now, while others are more comfortable waiting.
I do not agree with being in Phase 2. As long as the science says we're not safe, that's where I am.
We are in a controlled situation, and when the control is set aside, we usually hurt for a long time afterward.
I never wear face. I never wear. There's nothing wrong in Windsor. Everybody healthy.
As more leaders call for mandatory testing among agri-farm workers, and the health unit continues to make testing a priority, McNamara explains that more testing would likely lead to more positive cases, making it less likely Windsor-Essex would be allowed to move to Stage 2. Dale Molnar, CBC News, Windsor.
32 new cases of COVID-19 announced today in Windsor-Essex. All but 2 are people in the agri-farm sector. There's no one at Windsor Regional Hospital with a confirmed case, and there's protests looming from business owners that want to reopen. Today at Queen's Park, NDP MPP Lisa Gretzky asked provincial government for more details on why Windsor-Essex is in Stage 1 and what kind of help is on the way.
Speaker, we respect public health direction, but it is very difficult for my constituents to understand this decision without transparency. My constituents are at their wits' end with the prolonged closure. The Windsor-Essex Chamber has called for immediate financial relief for our local businesses, saying that it would be, quote, catastrophic for our region without it.
Now, as Windsor-Essex waits to enter Stage 2, it means certain businesses have to remain closed. We've heard about the financial difficulties that some are facing, and today new numbers show that our area has been hardest hit by the pandemic when it comes to job losses. There's been a 19% drop in employment between February and May. That's according to the Financial Accountability Office of Ontario. It's the sharpest drop in the province for a major city. The next closest drop, percentage-wise, that was St. Catharines, Niagara. That region there had a 15% drop. Now, our unemployment rate was already highest in Canada before the pandemic, back in January at 8.3%. That number has doubled, according to this report, sitting at 16.7%, the highest in Ontario. The report says that Windsor's seeing the sharpest decline because of temporary shutdowns in the manufacturing sector and temporary auto plant closures. Now, let's look at another chart here that shows the breakdown of job losses. You can see manufacturing sector, they lost the most jobs between February and May. Service-based industries were next with food and accommodation types of businesses. And then there was the information, culture, and recreation sector that saw another drop. Construction and finance, they saw a slight increase in the number of jobs added for those two sectors. And there's more reaction today from farm and greenhouse growers in our area after Premier Doug Ford slammed them for not doing enough to get their workers tested. Today, another spike in cases. Almost all are workers in the agricultural sector. We've been tracking that number. In total, there's been 473 positive tests locally in that industry. The CBC's Jason Vio joins us now live with more from Leamington. Jason, you spoke with a farm operator today. What's their take?
Well, Chris, the founder and CEO of Nature Fresh Farms here in Leamington says agribusiness owners are not to blame here. He's calling for more unity in the community and among all levels of government here in terms of moving forward and how to move forward and less finger pointing. Now, Nature Fresh Farms here in Leamington is the largest operation when it comes to agri-food permits for temporary foreign workers. According to the federal government, they have the most in Essex County. They have a workforce of 670 workers. 363 of those are migrant workers. Some of them they're still waiting on. Now, he says they've spent a lot of time recently trying to convince the migrant workers to get tested for COVID-19, which he says continues to be a challenge here.
Temporary foreign workers mostly come from countries where corruption is rampant. The police are not there to protect and serve. They're more there to shake them down or take advantage of them in a lot of cases. And so they already don't trust the government in their country. So when they come here, they have a natural inclination not to trust the government. We've spent years building trust with our foreign workers.
Now, he also says that they had concerns about loneliness and their mental health if they were forced to self-isolate for 14 days in a hotel. He says some of that has been relieved, or there's been some relief for them on that front because they're now allowed to do some of that self-isolating on the farm at a specific bunkhouse. So at Nature Fresh Farms, he says they have specific areas where they could put more than one person in a living situation that have tested positive for COVID-19 to keep them separate from the rest of the workforce. Now, when it comes to COVID-19 at Nature Fresh Farms here in Leamington, they have had 36 workers test positive, Chris, and 25 of them have recovered and since returned to work.
So what does he think should be done to get this situation in the agri-farm industry under control, Jason?
Well, he says that alleviating some of their concerns and continuing to do that is a big step forward, but he also says on-site testing, bringing it to them as opposed to busing them to an assessment center is also a good move as well. And that's something that they will start taking part in tomorrow. They'll have on-site testing here at Nature Fresh Farms, and he says he will be the first to get tested as a way to show and lead by example. But let's take a look at how we got here and some of the numbers leading up to today in terms of the growing number of COVID-19 cases in the agriculture sector. It was back on May 21st, so about a month ago, that the health unit began specifying each day how many new cases were from the agri-food sector. Prior to that, the main focus was mostly on long-term care. Now you can see the blue here illustrates the total number of new cases each day, and the red shows the number of agriculture workers who contracted COVID-19 in each of those days. So some days like yesterday and today, the vast majority of the new cases were among agriculture workers. Now, two of them, as we know, died, as we indicated in that chart, but in total, as you mentioned, more than 400 cases of COVID-19 among the agriculture sector in Windsor-Essex. And we did reach out to several of other farm operators and owners and greenhouse owners here in Windsor-Essex, but they either declined to comment or didn't return our requests for an interview.
Thanks, Jason. The CBC's Jason Vio live tonight. The health unit has outlined details behind a mandatory mask order for commercial establishments. Here's what we know. By Friday at 12:01 a.m., commercial businesses must create a policy that denies entry for customers not wearing a mask. Now, this applies to areas like retail shops, restaurants, and grocery stores. The health unit says it's essentially leaving this up to businesses to enforce the policy in good faith. It says that there's no need for a business to turn away a customer to achieve compliance. Now, there are also some expectations or some exceptions that would allow businesses to let certain customers inside without wearing a mask. Those, for instance, could be people who have issues breathing with a face covering. And here's what some Windsorites had to say about this a few days ago when the health unit first announced that this was coming.
I agree with it. I think it's a good idea. It's supposed to protect people, and you don't know, someone could be asymptomatic and might be able to spread it around.
I think it should be like wherever social distancing isn't possible, but like if you're in a bank, like they have screens, so I mean, that I'm not really sure. I mean, like I personally would feel a little more comfortable because like you don't know who has it or if you have it, so like just for other people's safety.
Provincial health officials faced questions earlier today about whether they will change their position when it comes to wearing masks throughout the province. Right now, wearing a mask is not mandatory.
So we've been looking at the research with masks and the social behavioral aspects related to that. It's much better if the public agree and endorse that by wearing them voluntarily. We want to emphasize that. That's part of the idea behind the social gathering limitation and the social circles. That when you're out, you take precautions to protect yourself. You do it not because you're forced to, because you want to do it and you want to do what's best for you and your family and your friends around you.
Now, the Minister of Health added that local officers of health can use their powers to enforce the wearing of masks if they feel it's necessary in the region, just like Windsor-Essex has done when it comes to commercial businesses. A new math curriculum is coming for elementary schools across the province, and it follows the Ford government's promise to scrap the way math is currently being taught in Ontario. Despite the pandemic, the new curriculum will roll out in September. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley has the details.
In Ontario's education system, math is the problem child. Different governments have tried different changes. This time, it's back to basics.
This is the first new elementary school math curriculum in 15 years. It's clear that a lot has changed since 2005, and our children's education needs to change with it.
Over the past decade, setting aside the year when exams were cancelled over a labor dispute, the percentage of grade 3 students meeting the provincial standard in math has steadily declined. Among grade 6 students, only half met the standard for the last 4 years running.
This curriculum was developed by some of the brightest minds in the province. Its development was supported by leading-edge research and advice from academics, from math education experts, from job creators, industry, nonprofit leaders, and of course you, our parents.
Students will be expected to memorize basic addition and subtraction and their times tables. There's a new emphasis on mental math, adding and subtracting in your head. Financial literacy will be taught in all grades, and coding is introduced in grade 1.
Do I think it's important to teach basics? Yes. Do I think mental math is important? Absolutely. Do I think math facts are important? Of course. But we cannot go backwards. We must go forwards, and we need a new approach to teach kids.
Even though COVID-19 has kept Ontario schools shut since March, the new math curriculum will launch in September.
I would argue from a competitive landscape, we must take action immediately to improve math scores. We were given a mandate by the people of this province to go back to basics, bring a math curriculum that actually reflects the priorities of the job market.
No doubt that's something that needs to be addressed. But to do that in the middle of a pandemic without even consulting educators and education workers, teachers in our province it's just unbelievable.
Teachers will be offered training on the new curriculum over the summer. For teachers who decline, the government says recorded webinars will be available in the fall. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
More reaction today after Windsor Police Service announced that they are conducting an internal review of an off-duty officer who posted this photo to social media over the weekend. It shows two employees taking a knee, a sign of protest against police brutality. Originally, the officer claimed that the staff refused service to one of his colleagues, but an investigation later determined that did not happen, and the officer had actually canceled his order instead.
Being refused service and refusing to accept something that's been served to you are completely different things. So we have to kind of examine that and ask ourselves why that kind of language was used. It really was a case of escalating a situation that did not need to be escalated, and just seeking a community level of outrage that did not need to occur.
Now, we asked Ontario's Information and Privacy Commissioner about this. They say, I would be concerned if an officer took photos of law-abiding citizens without having an actual law enforcement purpose. Adding, well, this may have occurred outside the context of law enforcement and not in a professional capacity. It is nonetheless inappropriate. A live look outside here at the city. Those clouds starting to shift away. Hopefully it means we'll try to avoid and dodge what was forecasted to come, but the week's end looks like it could be wet. We'll have more in the forecast coming up. Now in Edmonton, magpies are considered a bit of a symbol of the city, but they can be pretty annoying to humans. And turns out they're a pain for cats too.
They are.
This video here was taken by a CBC producer. That's a cat on a roof, and it seems pretty chill until they're surrounded by Edmonton's favorite squawking birds. A fun fact here, magpies, they're known as a gulp, a tittering, or a mischief. Colette, I'm sure you knew that, just like I knew that as well, right?
This is what I count on you for, Chris, is to educate me about these things.
That's what we're a tag team. We got fun videos and we're learning together and we're helping people. I believe that's what it's called.
And I do think a mischief, that's a good one. I think it feels like it's appropriate right there.
Yeah, probably describes us.
Yeah, well, and the weather maybe a little bit of mischief here in terms of, you know, a cold front that's moving through, and you can kind of see the differences because look at the cold air that's been carved out here in kind of the central part of the province. The temperatures only in the teens, and then over towards eastern Ontario and into southern Quebec, still that heat and humidity, low 30s, and here we are at 26. You know, we haven't really seen a temperature like this since about the 16th because this last week we've been mostly with highs between 29 and about 33. Lots of readings, in fact, in the low 30s. And it's kind of interesting, too, all right, the temperatures maybe not that interesting, but just watch when we take a look at what's going on with the humidex values, because here we are in the low 20s, and look at London and Kitchener, and that's because the cold front that's been working its way through has not brought those dew point values down there, just a little bit to the east of us, and the dew point values haven't come down yet. So those will be. Now, the main line and the front that's going through is bringing those storms well off to the east, but there's still some instability. So if you pop up showers and little storms there, now we could see a little bit of that happening back into Michigan and having an impact on us this evening. So there's still the risk we could see a little bit more of activity, highly isolated, but you see the models are trying to pick that up too. So you know, if it starts to look a little ominous out there, we might see a little bit of it, you get tagged by a shower or a storm, the risk is there. Again, I say highly isolated. So what we will find is things are kind of getting a little bit more comfortable with the air mass. That hangs on, and then the heat's going to start coming right back up at us. So we get seasonal for a little bit, and then you're going to see in the 5-day forecast how things are just changing around on us once again. And it gets kind of summer-like on us. So here are your overnight temperatures down to 14. Still some of those isolated storms over towards the London region and some that may roll over from Michigan. And then tomorrow into the afternoon hours with those winds out of the west, at times they may be just a little bit gusty, so gusting around 40 kilometers an hour. You see what an average high is for this time of year. So here we are a little bit, actually today we were kind of on par, a little bit below that for Wednesday. I said the heat, Chris, kind of building back at us, a little mischievous there. Is it only, you know, just teases us back to seasonal, and as we go towards the weekend, coming right back up towards those 30s again.
Thanks, Ms. Colette.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Coming up, we're going to take a look at something that Donald Trump campaigned on, his border election promises, an update on where that sits now.
Dem.
U.S. President Donald Trump is revisiting an issue dear to his political base, border control. His administration has announced new restrictions for foreign workers and asylum seekers. With election around the corner, the Trump campaign has been struggling to turn focus away from a growing pandemic, an uncertain economy, and anti-racism protests. Stephen D'Souza has more.
I was just given a beautiful picture of the wall. That's before and after. And it's quite a difference.
Besieged by criticism, Donald Trump went to a place he feels comfortable, talking about border security and immigration at an event in Arizona.
Illegal immigration is down 84% from this time last year.
Trump is also targeting legal immigration, cutting back on the number of workers allowed into the United States. On Monday, the administration issued a broad order, temporarily freezing new work visas. The move targets thousands of foreign workers, particularly those coming into the lucrative tech sector. It also affects thousands of Canadians.
Panic. People are very nervous. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of questions that are coming out.
There's a debate right now as to whether Canadians who don't need a visa to enter the U.S. may be exempt.
I tend to tell clients that we should take a wait-and-see approach. They're going to issue guidance, and when they issue guidance, we'll have to adjust our plans accordingly.
Lawyer Andrea Vaitzner in Montreal says her colleagues have called 2 different border offices and got 2 different answers about who's covered by the president's order.
Our interpretation is that Canadians do not fall under it. We're concerned that the Trump administration will take another viewpoint and will try to argue that Canadians do fall under it in some way.
For some Canadians, the visa freeze is a boon, not a barrier.
We have people from Costa Rica, from Russia, from China, from India.
Calgary-based Irfan Raji specializes in helping tech workers having issues immigrating to the U.S. He settles them in Canada, where they work locally or remotely for American companies.
So long as Canada can use this opportunity and other opportunities to attract and retain the best labor from around the world, it will absolutely help us economically, both short-term and long-term.
Canadian tech giant Shopify put out a call on Twitter today telling tech workers with visa issues to consider Canada.
So we want to give jobs to Americans right now.
That's the president's goal with his plan, but it may be Canada that ends up benefiting. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
4 infectious disease prevention and control advisors to the White House testified before a congressional committee today in Washington, and they all agreed coronavirus testing must be ramped up, especially with the new jump in the number of infections in many states.
We're now seeing a disturbing surge of infections that looks like it's a combination, but one of the things is an increase in community spread. That's very troublesome to me. The way you address that is you have to have the manpower, the system, the testing to identify, isolate, and contact trace in an effective way so that when you see those increases, you can understand where they're coming from and you can do something about them.
Despite President Donald Trump's claim he told authorities to slow down testing, all 4 top advisors today testified he had not said so to them. Today, Trump repeated his belief that more testing gives what he believes is a false impression. Major surges in infections have been reported in Florida, Texas, Arizona, and other states as restrictions are relaxed. Dr. Fauci maintains a vaccine against COVID-19 could be ready by the new year. It's 6:29 p.m. and that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news at any time, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media too. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Power and Politics is up next. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.